I woke up one morning and realized that over 49% of my Gmail inboxes are completely dead. Completely burnt overnight. Just like that. I then had to drop hundreds of dollars on brand new domains just to keep my clients' campaigns running. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the only one this has happened to. Over the last year, cheap cold email infrastructure that used to work no longer works anymore. AI filters in the recipients' inboxes are getting way more aggressive. And if you're still running things the way you were a couple of years ago, you're probably seeing your reply rate go down and you don't really have an idea why that is. So today I'm going to break down exactly what changed about cold email deliverability, what the new rules are, and what your setup needs to look like if you want your emails to have any chance at landing in the inboxes rather than the spam, promotion, and junk folders of your prospects. Anyways, let's jump right into it. The first big change that I've noticed over the last year is about cheap email infrastructure. Simply put, it doesn't work anymore. For years, people have been buying SMTP inboxes, and I'm sure, as you know by now, you have the Google mailboxes that you can buy, you've got the Outlook mailboxes that you can buy, and then you've got the SMTP inboxes, which tend to be half price or even cheaper than the Google and Outlook accounts. By having been doing cold outreach on a daily basis over the last 3 years of running my agency, I can confidently say that SMTP inboxes, most of the time, are absolute rubbish. And as soon as Gmail and Microsoft made their email filters more strict, those cheap SMTP setups were the first ones to be completely wiped out. So if I were you, don't bother with SMTP providers and just use Outlook or Gmail instead. Now, the second big change is the introduction of AI filters. Email providers are now using AI to, first of all, read your emails and to secondly then decide whether that email deserves to be in the inbox or whether it should be put into the spam, promotion, and junk folders. So it's not so much about the technical setup of knowing DMARC and all of these other boring abbreviations. And yes, even if your email copy is absolutely fine, your emails can still be filtered out simply because they all sound the same when they're entering the recipient's Google or Outlook accounts. Now, very recently, I had a couple of clients for who we have seen email replies drop below 0.5%, and that was just because we used the exact same static copy inside of each email campaign. And of course, we were super worried because typically we don't really see our email campaigns drop below 2% in reply rates. But given that we use a tool called Smartlead.ai to do all of our email sending, we ended up adding a syntax variation. And for those of you that are not aware of syntax, it's basically the idea of you varying the email copy whereby it sounds synonymously the same. However, it's not exactly word for word the same in every email that you send out. So as you can see over here, for example, on my screen right now, all I'm doing here is I've got this email body that I've just typed up really quickly as an example. And if I click on AI syntax, I can then basically add my API key over here from OpenAI. I'm going to head into settings in the top right hand corner, and then you can see API keys on the left hand side. So now I'm just going to generate a new API key, create new secret key over here. I'm going to call this Smart Lead Test, select quick project, create secret key. And if I copy and paste my API key into Smart Lead over here, I can then connect to GPT-4, which will enable me to generate a syntax variation of this email so that each email recipient will receive a different variation of the words. And by using the syntax functionality within Smartlead, I then stand more chance of landing in the inbox than in the spam, promotion, and junk folders, because the Outlook and Google inboxes of the recipients to who I'm sending this outreach typically will not be able to tell that we're sending the exact same email at each individual prospect because it just varies. And of course, in this case, if it says, hey, hello, hi, the recipient only gets one variation of this copy. So if I click into preview over here, I can see, hey, Tom, are you interested in looking at the report which compares your LinkedIn post to that of Michael and Eric? Simply reply yes and I'll get it to you. Now, again, this is just an example of a random email copy, but I very much encourage you to use the AI syntax functionality within Smartlead and to put this to the test yourself. So as you probably guessed by now, the bar to start sending cold emails has never really been lower, but the bar to do it properly has never been higher. And if I'm totally honest, that's probably good news if you're willing to do it the right way, because the people that were not serious about doing cold email outreach correctly have probably given up by now, given how many little things like AI syntaxing you need to be on top of in order to make sure that your emails land into the inbox rather than the promotion folders. Now that we've covered what's changed, let's talk about what your infrastructure actually needs to look like going forward. First of all, Needless to say, never send cold outreach from your main domain. And what I mean by that is, let's say your main domain is coca-cola.com. In that case, by sending cold outreach from any mailboxes, any inboxes that are at coca-cola.com, you will unavoidably start being flagged for doing mass outreach. And for that reason, it's just a matter of time until your domain can be either blacklisted or your emails are landing in promotion, junk, and spam folders. So if you're using the same domain for cold outreach as you're using for day-to-day emails, then all of your emails to your friends, your family members, your colleagues, your investors, your partners, or anyone else, they will all be landing in spam. So never send emails from your main domain. So what you should do instead is buy similar looking domains. So what I mean by that, if you're using a tool like Smartlead.ai, all you would need to do is just head into Smartlead.ai. All you would need to do is click on the left-hand side of the panel on email accounts, and over here navigate to purchase in the top right-hand corner, and over here you'll have an option to either buy some pre-warmed mailboxes, which could be useful if you want to do cold outreach literally right now. You could always buy pre-warmed mailboxes, or you can just buy fresh mailboxes, in which case you'll just click on get fresh mailboxes. You can select how many mailboxes you would need. Typically I would recommend starting with around 10, and then you can scale it up depending on your sending volume. And in this case, if I'm selecting 10, over here you can then choose which email service provider to use. Obviously, since I already had a go at SMTP providers, I'll be choosing Google and Outlook. You can then click into continue, and over here you can type in your main company domain. So in my case, my company domain is Unlock Claude Code, because I've got a great course which teaches people how to use Claude Code for lead generation purposes. And in this case, if I type in my main website to the top, I can then basically find all the lookalike domains as well. So I can then just add them to my cart, similar to how I do this on ASOS or on Amazon or any other website. And all I'm going to do is just click on some of these domains. You can see they will cost you $13 per year, which is the same regardless on which provider you end up choosing for this. You can then click into continue. You then just need to fill in your names, and then basically on the back of that, you can just type in your first name and last name as you would like it to appear on the mailboxes, and then proceed to checkout in order to basically purchase those domains. As I mentioned just now, when it comes to inbox providers, Gmail and Outlook are like the Nike and Adidas of email infrastructure, and SMTP is this random brand that you've never heard of. So if I were you, make sure to just buy Google inboxes or Microsoft inboxes. And yes, SMTP providers are half the price of Google and Microsoft, but it kind of reflects upon the quality that you will get in return when buying the SMTP accounts. Now, in terms of how many mailboxes you should be using per domain, typically I would recommend 2 to 3 mailboxes. If you want to be super safe, in that case, just buy 2 mailboxes per domain. And by the way, I have this sending volume calculator where you can plug in the number of prospects that you want to be reaching out to on a monthly basis. And on the back of that, it will tell you how many domains and inboxes you really need in order to pull this off. So in this case, for example, let's say we want to reach out to 3,000 people per month. Let's just put that here. So let's say at the top, I'm going to put in 3,000. I want to send 3 emails to each person. So that means 9,000 emails per month. And then based on that, it tells me, so here it tells me if I send 25 emails per domain per day, then basically for that, I would need around 15 mailboxes and 7 domains. So if you want to grab this calculator, that will be the second link in the description down below. So go check it out, and you can just basically just make a copy of it and save it for yourself by just clicking on file and make a copy, and then you can just take it completely for free from me. And needless to say, after you buy the domains, you set up the mailboxes inside of Smart Senders in Smartlead, you can then connect them to a warm-up. And what I mean by that is typically you will see the mailboxes in your email accounts over here. If you click on the toggle in the top left hand corner, you can then select all the mailboxes, click on apply selection, and over here you should be able to click on bulk update in the top left hand corner of your screen. And on the back of that, you can then enable the bulk warm up, and the warm up is basically the process of training the emails to land into the inbox as opposed to the spam, promotion, and junk folders. And then you can start the warm up at 5 emails per day, enable the bulk update daily ramp up of 5 emails, set the reply rate to about 20% on average, and then more than that, you can just over here just type in smart leads, so that in case if you ever get emails in your inbox which contain smart leads, you can just create a filter and screen them out. And then over here you could just tick some of these boxes, as you can see on my screen right now. Obviously you want to probably send emails just on weekdays, and then you can click on save, and that will automatically warm up all of your email inboxes. And you can see the warm up reputation will be shown over here in percentage terms. Ideally you want the warm up not be enabled, and you can see the daily limits of how many emails are being sent per day as well. And if you ever want any of that stuff to change, all you would need to do again is just select the mailboxes, click on bulk updates, and then go to general. And in general, you can select how many messages per day you want to be sent from per inbox. And you can also add your email signature here whilst you're at it. But remember, the email signature should never have any attachments, links, or any other funky text apart from just your full name and your job title and your company name. No domains, nothing of that sort, because links typically trigger not landing into the inbox. And as I probably mentioned a couple of times already, ideally you want to be warming up your email inboxes anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 weeks to start with. And as soon as you start any email campaigns, you still want to be warming up the mailbox at the same time. So I recommend having a 50-50 split on the number of cold emails that you send per day and the number of warm-up emails that you send per day, because that way you can send, say, 15 cold emails per day, 15 warm-up emails per day, and that way your domain and your mailboxes will have a much healthier longevity so that they don't get burnt like my Gmail inboxes got burnt a couple of months ago. Oh, and by the way, if you want to try out Smartlead, which is the tool that I've been showing to you so far throughout this video, you can try it out completely for free by clicking on the top link in the description down below. It's what I personally use to manage all of my email infrastructure, email warm-ups and campaigns, be it running it via Clay or Claude Code in the process as well. And really quickly, just a couple of small tips that I have for you before you launch any of your first campaigns with a tool like Smartlead. The single biggest deliverability killer is sending HTML emails. And what I mean by that is a lot of people that are just starting to do cold outreach, they end up attaching files to their cold emails like their decks or their one pages or random other stuff. They end up adding some sort of hyperlinks to their website inside of the cold emails. And all of that means that you're more likely to land in the spam folders. And I know I said this a couple of times, but I just have to be 100% real with you here. So in order to combat that, whenever you're creating a campaign using a tool like Smartlead, look out for the plain text mode ability over here. So whenever you set up a campaign, you need to go through delivery optimization. And when you click into it over here, you can just switch on this plain text mode, and this will disable you from sending anything in HTML format, which basically doesn't really change anything as far as your email copy is concerned. It just makes sure that you're more likely to land in the inbox rather than the promotion folders. And if you want to send a link to a resource, for example, as a part of your campaign, just ask for permission first. And one thing that I like to do is in my first email say, oh, hey, do you want this cool resource? Here is what you get. Reply this word like yes in order to get it. And let's imagine that the campaign that you can see on my screen is the campaign that we're sending out. You can then create a subsequence by clicking on subsequence under the campaign. If you create the subsequence over here, when you create the subsequence, you can basically then choose a trigger for this subsequence to be any leads that reply with specific text. And for example, in your first immediate email, you could say something like reply pink and I'll send you this resource, right? So in this case, we set the trigger to be that their reply contains the word pink, and immediately as soon as that happens, we can then basically create a subsequence, which is another cool functionality inside of Smartlead, which enables you to share resources or follow up with the prospects automatically, assuming that they engage with your campaign like you want them to engage with that campaign. And by the way, I've got a separate video on how to use subsequences. I'll be adding it as the second link in the description as well, and you can get all the resources under that second link in the description that I mentioned throughout this video. Then just two other tiny things. First of all, make sure to never track email opens or link clicks inside of your emails. And yes, I know any marketers that are watching this will be questioning why. And in super simple terms, the only way for you to track the open rates or the link clicks would be by installing a pixel inside of your emails. And again, that means that you would need to send emails in a HTML format as opposed to a plain text format. And simply put, by tracking open rates, you're less likely to land into the inbox of your prospects. And also, a lot of the time by tracking open rates, you're going to get inaccurate metrics. And there are a lot of other caveats. For example, for anyone that's opening your emails from a MacBook or from an Apple device, a lot of the time the stats for that will not be too accurate. So I would not trust the open rates. I would not trust any metric apart from the reply rates. So make sure that these two toggles are switched on. You're not tracking email opens. You're not tracking link clicks. And more than that, whenever you're setting up any campaigns inside of Smartlead, if you head over into the protection and limits part over here on the left-hand side of the screen, you can always enable the high bounce rate auto protection by switching on the toggle here. And I recommend to add 5 over here, and this means that if over 5% of the emails that you send out end up bouncing, in other words, the recipients do not receive the email, emails, because either we're sending an email to an email account that does not exist, or for whatever reason, our emails are not allowed into their inbox. In that case, as soon as this exceeds 5%, it could really start hurting your long-term deliverability and health of your domain and your mailboxes. So for that reason, I recommend you to add 5% over here so that your campaign automatically pauses as soon as your bounce rate reaches 5%. Now, if you want to get all of this properly set up for yourself, as I mentioned a couple of times already, you can try Smartlead for yourself using the first link in the description under the video. It handles everything that we talked about so far today, from inbox warm-up to campaign settings to reply categorization as well. And the best thing is that it's all centralized inside of one place in Smartlead. Again, the link for that will be the top link in the description. And if you want to see how you can use AI to send over 500,000 emails per month, then check out this video popping up on your screen right now. Anyways, I'll see you in that video. Have a good one in the meantime.